You're listening to Make It Possible Ukraine Volunteer Heroes Stories, the podcast about volunteers who have made a difference in Ukraine. Together, we can make it possible for people in Ukraine. Today, we have a remarkable volunteer joining us. With a strong love for children and a rich background in both education and mentorship, he brings a wealth of experience and compassion to his volunteer work in Ukraine. Here's a bit about him. He began his journey in education as an assistant in a preschool in Hawaii while his own children were young. For the past 2 and a half years, he has been a mentor for children in Africa. Additionally, he has an impressive 50 years career as a pilot and flight instructor. His mission is to help restore some normalcy to Ukrainian children's life. He believes that by preparing those children for a brighter future, he is contributing to better Ukraine. Please join me in welcoming this dedicated and compassionate volunteer, Gary, to this podcast. Hi, Gary.
Hi, Kat. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Good morning. How are you doing today?
Great. It's a beautiful day today, so it was an easy walk.
It's a beautiful day here, but the situation in Ukraine is kind of very uncertain those days.
No, we heard air raid sirens just a half an hour or so ago.
Yeah, it was this morning. It was kind of scary. Let's talk about beautiful, exciting things. So let's talk about you, Gary.
Oh, no.
So I think our listeners and I also wants to hear it one more time. How did you end up in Ukraine?
Well, I was volunteering for the American Red Cross back home in North Carolina. And it got very, very tense and got very heavy, and I left the organization. Then I was throwing around looking for something to do, and I found the Volunteering in Ukraine website, and I've been wanting to come for the last 2 years anyway. So as soon as this opportunity came up and you responded to me, I had to come.
Were you not afraid coming to Ukraine after all the news, after all these things happening?
No, I don't scare easy after 30 years flying all over the world and a total of 50, instructing and everything. So.
That's awesome. So let's hear a little bit about your background and how what you went through in your life actually led you to volunteering.
Well, I grew up in the Army. I'm what they call an Army brat. And on the Army bases, giving of yourself was very standard. All the mothers did that, all the fathers on weekends, the older kids. It was just sort of in our blood. So whenever I've had an opportunity to help out somewhere, I feel almost an obligation. I certainly feel a strong need to do that.
That's beautiful. So you believe that volunteering is changing the lives and improving the world we live in?
I hope so. And I wish more people would get involved and change the world a little faster. That would be good.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for being here, for everything you do for the world, and especially Ukrainian people.
Well, thanks for having me in the program. It's been a lot of fun, hard work, some sadness, some joy. So it's been a mixed bag.
So let's talk more about your experience volunteering in Ukraine so far. Tell us more about the emotions you had, about everything you just mentioned.
Well, the first day I came, I just sort of stood in the back of the room and tried to get a feel for the flow of it and the relationship between the other tutors or mentors and the kids. And it was interesting to see as the three groups came through how each of the dynamics changed with each group. So the next day I joined in and they made me feel very, very welcome. I have some good friends there, both in the mentors and in the kids. And it's been a very positive experience. It breaks my heart to see the kids exposed to something like this through no fault of their own. Excuse me. And you can tell every once in a while that that's definitely on their mind as much as they try to keep it down and smother it. But it comes through, and that's very sad because I can't do anything about it. I don't speak the language well enough, and you can't just hug a kid here. They'll look at you funny. So
yeah, I think in general, even if you speak the language, sometimes it's so hard to comfort somebody. Like, for example, when I started this program, I had the kid, her name is Karina, and she used to come to the classes and just cry. And those classes, we used to hold them at the shelters. We don't do that anymore because we want to invite kids from, we want to take kids from shelter outside the shelter just to have some more positive impact and be like in a nicer place instead of going to those shelters that are not nice. But anyways, going back to the story, she would just cry, come to the classes and cry. And I would talk to her. And it took me probably like 3 months when she actually opened up and she told me what the problem is. And one of the issues she was telling me, she's like, oh, my grandma, they still live next to the front line. Her city is Pokrovsk, which is like 20 kilometers from the front lines. And she told me like yesterday they hit the house next to them and her grandma is still staying there. And that's something like you can't really say much. And I was just telling her to stay positive, that they're happy that they have a new home here in Lviv and we all love them so much. And eventually, I think after we do what we do, which is like bring them positive emotions and show a positive examples of, I don't know, that everything can be good. Because sometimes when those kids come back home, they might not have somebody to look up to at their home. Or, for example, for military kids, unfortunately, their father can be at war and it's been 3 years already, 2.5 years. So it's like, it's nice for them to look up to somebody. And I think that's what we do. And eventually I see the results. So within 3 years, Karina changed. She is a girl who used to come to classes and cry. And she comes to classes and she say like, now I'm better. And because I have so many friends volunteers that she speaks to as like since they used to come to Ukraine. She said, I want to go to university now, which before she didn't want to do anything. So she's studying to become university and she knows, and Lviv becomes her new home because of all these volunteering programs we do. So what I'm trying to say, it sometimes takes years to change, the shift their mentality and to make them feel better. So sometimes weeks do a huge difference too, but we will see a result eventually, like not right away. So some kids will open up and change.
And you know, there's one little girl in particular who comes to the class. I believe she's in the middle group, and she participates. She smiles all the time, but she doesn't speak to anybody. She doesn't speak to her friends. She doesn't speak to the mentors. And the other day, she just put her head down on the desks for a while. So, and it's hard for somebody who hasn't lived in a war zone actively to relate to that. I mean, the shock to these little people's brains is quite stunning, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's totally true. Yeah, I mean, but I think what we do will improve their future. And they will look up to whatever the days we have spending with volunteers now. And I think those actually are the best times. Like, for example, going back to the same group from the shelter, I'm related to them because I know them for 2.5 years. And I've heard a lot of things, a lot of feedback from them within those couple of years. So they said, I was asking them, we played this game at the lake, and I was asking them, what was your best memory during like last year or something? And they said those programs are their best memories. That's all they like looking forward to. And when we stop programs, they always ask, when is the next one? And I tell them like, I'll do my best to do it as soon as I can. But again, it just depends on lots of things.
Yeah, that day up at the lake was really something. I didn't see anything but smiles.
I think so.
And everybody playing together and cementing their relationships, not just with the mentors, but with each other. Because I'm sure all these kids didn't know each other when they got here, and now they have a whole family full of friends.
Exactly.
So that's great.
And I hope so. And I'm receiving like the best feedback from parents, from kids after the camps that they loved it, they come back. And always when I ask them what was your favorite part, and they never say like lake or that, they said volunteers.
Oh, wow.
So that's like a big deal. So thank you, and people like you who come to Ukraine and volunteer. It's a huge deal.
It's a privilege, believe me.
Yes, and we're privileged to organize it. Thank you so much. And I also kind of want to know, what have you noticed coming to Ukraine? What have you noticed in Lviv? How is it different from just traveling to any other country now?
Well, it's a little more austere. It's a little harder to get around because of the war. And sometimes the buses and trains run, sometimes they don't. Of course, all the airports in the country are closed, so that makes it a little tough. It was a 7.5 or 8 hour ride down from Krakow on the bus, but it took me right downtown. And when I got there, I've mentioned before that I lived in Budapest for 10 years from 1999 to 2009. And it seems very familiar very often I look around and I see this beautiful architecture and the city squares and the people hustling around and bustling around, and the trams, which they're made by the same company as the ones in Budapest. So when I see one go by, it's like, oh, where am I? Oh, yeah, in Lviv. Everybody's been wonderful. When I'm walking around, going to a restaurant or cafe or something, everybody's been very welcoming. I just am waiting for a better day for everybody.
Yeah, that's true. That's all we're waiting for. Everybody here in Ukraine, it's just like you're stuck without ability to make any plans for your future. Anything, like you feel like you have no control over anything in your life. It's not a best feeling. I'm not even talking about people who have their families at war, at the front lines. That's something I don't even know how people deal with. That's ridiculous.
That would be hard. And like the little girl you talked about with her grandmother up there, you can't say, don't worry, everything's going to be all right, because wouldn't be true.
It is hard because it's unknown. It's very unknown. That's true. But we all hope for, good, positive outcome and quickly. And quickly, yes. Something, I don't know, I would want to ask you about it, but it's kind of like a specific topic. So let me know if there's something you want to talk about it. It's just like, what is your opinion on the war? What is your, I don't know, because I always ask people from outside Ukraine, especially, because here we get one news and then from outside Ukraine, you get another news.
Sure.
Here it's more optimistic, like everything is going to be okay because that's what government has to do for their country. If they do opposite, it will be a chaos. So what is your opinion on the war? When do you think it will finish? Like, I don't know, like what do you think going to happen in the future? Like, I really want to know your opinion.
Well, when this is the second invasion, of course, most people forget about 2014, but when they came the second time, I was absolutely furious. It was hard to explain where the anger came from, how strong it was. And the newspapers in America were at first like, oh, they don't stand a chance. And then when you stood a chance, then they were right behind you all the way. But after about a year and a half, with our political problems there, you became a football, unfortunately. And people on the extreme right, like Trump and Speaker Mike Johnson, play games with people's lives here. They held up aid for 8 or 10 weeks. And who knows how many people were killed as a result of that. So I'm angry with them, too. But no, I think the war, I agree with President Zelensky. The only victory is when they're all gone, all of them. And no, don't give them any territory, none.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's very valuable opinion, and we hope that will happen sooner than later. Yeah, we're all here very optimistic and really hoping for that. I agree with you. I'm also American citizen and Ukrainian citizen, so I follow the politics and everything else. And sometimes I'm getting really mad at them. I was like, come on, people. Are you not for like freedom and making the world a better place? It seems opposite.
I wish they could be here with us
today. I think that's a thing.
And maybe head east a few hundred miles and see what they think.
It's hard to relate unless you saw it. I haven't met one person who came to Ukraine and think opposite what we just discussed, but you have to experience that. It's hard to relate from far, far away. So, maybe more politicians will come to Ukraine and then they'll see the difference, the destructions, and then I guarantee they would change their opinion. But again, that's not up to us, and we hope they would at least.
But I'm very proud of President Biden for standing up to them and to the Russians.
Yeah.
I think, of course, it could have been stronger, but it could have been weaker, too.
Exactly.
So I think he did the best that he could in the circumstances.
We very appreciate him, everything he have done. I mean, we're here in Lviv, probably because of him. So that's a big deal for us. Really appreciate it.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Yes, definitely.
As an American, it's nice to hear that.
So we're hoping for the best, and I do believe that the war will end sooner and Ukraine will recover and everything going to be okay. And so I mean, again, thank you, American government, and you for coming here. It's such a big deal for us. Without you, I mean, Ukraine definitely won't stand. So that's amazing. Thank you so much. We respect Americans so much. We did before the war, but now it's like, for us, it's like the biggest friend. So thank you so much.
The vast majority of people in America care deeply what happens here. And it might be hard to find that out reading our newspapers, but talking to people and other ways, the people there know this is wrong. They know the difference between right and wrong.
Exactly.
And they're very upset and they want it to end. And if you have to push them out of the country to end it, then let's push them out of the country.
Yep. That's true. Yeah, we really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And I think like the volunteering movement, us in Ukraine, seeing so many people coming and helping out, that helped us so much, like mentally especially, because we feel that the world care. From the moment when the war started, we would have like so many volunteers at the border because not everybody wanted to go to Ukraine for like obvious reasons. But when you would leave Ukraine because things were very dangerous, we would have like people from all over the world like feeding you, helping you out. So it was such a big help. And now people like you come into Ukraine, that's like a big deal. And nowadays when you walk in Lviv, you hear foreigners, you hear like foreign language, and you're like, okay, everything going to be okay.
Yeah.
So for us local people, it gives a hope. First of all, we see that the world care, and that's something I want to show our kids as well. If their parents are at war, fighting actively at the front lines, so their kid at least sees that the world care and people from all over the world come to help as volunteers. And also they'll tell their parents about this, and they feel like somebody cares.
Sure.
So all these things are like such a positive influence for us, and it makes us believe in a better future just by having foreign volunteers from all over the world coming to Ukraine. It just gives us a hope. It's a big deal. Thank you so much.
Yeah, if I could deliver one message to the people of this country, it would be, you are not forgotten.
Yeah.
And people do care.
Thank you. That's a big deal for us. I think that's what would help us stand longer, this thing, because I don't think anything else would, because everything else is really like sad and hard. But this message means a lot for us. Thank you so much.
It's an honor.
So last question I have. So how would you like to summarize your experience in volunteering? And do you think it's worth coming to Ukraine to volunteer?
Oh, it's absolutely worth it. It's life-changing, and virtually every little thing you do will have an impact. And I look at things like that as like a pebble in a pond. Nice calm pond, you drop a pebble in it, and the ripples keep going out. So any gesture, any kindness is going to have impact. So
I believe so too. There is this American movie, I forgot the name, but it's about giving back. You probably watched that before. It was one teacher in school teaching the kid that he has to give back to another person, another person giving back to another person.
I think that's Pay It Forward.
Pay It Forward, thank you. I forgot the name. So I think that's such a beautiful concept, and I think what we do here is what it is. Because it might seem like it's a lesson or learning the language, but in the end of the day, it's not about learning the language. It's about showing the act of kindness, and then those kids will spread it out. And also for you guys, for volunteers, I think it makes an impact too. Like it's impact on every single person that involves in volunteering in general. And a good example I can tell you, and I think that's really awesome. We had more than two, but a few kids from Eastern Ukraine who moved to shelter in Lviv where I started this program when the war started. So when I got there, they were just like looking at me. It's like, who is this girl? Because you have to earn respect, especially with older kids, with teenagers. So it took me a while, but eventually they loved it. Maybe the reason was because nobody was there. Nobody cared about those shelters. It seems like everybody would be there, but nobody was there in reality.
Wow.
So it was just me and a couple of volunteers trying to make them smile. And those girls and those kids from this shelter, they come back to my programs for like almost 2.5 years now.
Wow.
Every single time. They follow me everywhere. One volunteer told me they'll do whatever you say. I was like, okay, I'll be careful with that. But anyway, so this time around, I asked the girls, I was like, hey, would you like to be assistant teachers for our classes for younger kids and help them out to learn English? And they volunteers, and that's what they're doing right now. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things that happen, that like paying forward. Now they want to help out too.
Right.
So that's really beautiful.
And I think it encourages the younger kids too to see the solidity of the program and what's happening around them, that they see these people have made it this far, I can make it that far.
Absolutely. I think that's a great example. Well, so thank you so much, Gary, for everything you do in Ukraine, for today, for everything you did last week, and everything you'll do for the future. It's such a big deal for us. And because of people like you, we're still standing, and we still believe in a bright, happy future ahead of us. Thank you so much.
Oh, sure. Can I ask you a quick question?
Yes, please.
What was the most difficult, if there was a difficult part about getting this ball rolling in the first place? I mean, there was nothing, and then along came Kat.
So I'll give you some details. I'll start with my background, so that will explain a little bit more and makes more sense. So I was born in Ukraine in a small town next to a nuclear power station. So it's like 40,000 people. My parents are nuclear engineers. And when I was studying there, I was good at math and physics, and I wanted to be a physician but they told me like, oh, woman physician, we don't need that, because it was back in Soviet Union, end of Soviet Union, but still the same mentality. Then I wanted to be an architect, and they told me, no, you shouldn't do that. It's hard to find job. Anyways, it was like such a limitless childhood for us. Like you can't do anything unless whatever. So with those skills, I got to university for I become like economist. I studied economics, which was also interesting for me because I'm really good with numbers. And so I finished university here in Lviv. Then I went for a summer program to US 4 times. So every single summer break, I used to go to United States. So I went to DC first. I was working as a lifeguard. Then I was going to LA a couple times, working in like random jobs, summer jobs. I was like photographer in a pawn shop. I was a waitress for 3 days because I was like, oh, this is hard.
Yes,
like,
it is hard work.
Super hard. Now I'm living like tips all the time, like a lot.
Yes,
because
good for you.
It's like hard job. And eventually, for me, when I was 19, I was like, whoa, this is such a beautiful place. I really like Los Angeles. So after I finished university here, I enrolled in university in Los Angeles because I was a really good student. So for me, I passed all exams. And I loved studying, and I had really good examples in my life. For me, it was my parents. Like, they're amazing. And also, when I moved to US, I found that Americans are like the nicest, the most inspirational people. If they see a talent in you, they will carry you up to whatever you want to be. Like, every job I have, university, everybody was just so helpful. And I don't know if it's just because the mentality is like, you can make it possible, right? This American dream, you come from... No matter where you came from, you can become whoever you want. So I finished UCLA. I became certified public account CPA. I worked as a top consulting companies there. I lived 2 blocks from the ocean, so my life was beautiful. I loved it. And I was taking my parents on like vacation all over the world. I was like, we could go to Peru or we would go to like Brazil, anywhere, because I wanted to do something nice for them. So I filled up all this they tell about this I feel like I filled up everything I needed for my life, for happiness. And at that moment, I was like, I kind of want to do something more for where I came from, for Ukrainian people. So when I lived in LA still in 2020, I started 501c3, which is nonprofit organization, because I was like, okay, I'm a CPA. For me, it's super easy. And plus my clients, because it's tax deductible in the end of the year, sometimes I ask them, if you want to make donation, maybe you would donate to my organization. So I thought that's like really easy way for me to give back. And then at that moment, I would just send money to Ukraine to different organizations because I thought that's the best what I can do. But at some point, I think it was 2013, something like that, 2023, after COVID, I started working for myself. I opened my own practice, so I was working remotely. And I was like, okay, I do miss my family so much. And I have no reason to be in LA anymore. Maybe I'll move back home. That was my opinion, and I did. So it was a year before the war started. So I moved back home. I enjoyed Ukraine so much. Before the war started, you would see like people out, concerts, everybody's happy. I mean, Ukraine is like have such a good life quality when it's not a war because like the food is amazing.
It's really, really amazing.
Cost of living is not expensive. Like it's what is that? Cost, like everything. It's just really, really nice place. I liked it. But then the war started, and I still had my nonprofit 501c3, and all my friends just started donating me for, they said, whatever reasons, whatever you need there. So I would just spend everything on helping volunteer soldiers that were going to as they were going to army or were taken to the war, because at that moment, like, we had nothing here. So we would ship everything from US or from other countries. So I would just buy like these protective gears for those volunteer fighters, because that seems to be like, you can't think about education when people would die at war going like pretty much naked. And like whoever donated, they were okay with that. They said like, whatever you need, whatever purpose is. So at that moment, I was like, but that's kind of sad, because nonprofit was supposed to be educational. And I was like, oh my gosh, what I would be able to do with those money if it was not for war? I would just probably start schools and educational program, because the war is so expensive. Like one of the like helmets, it would cost like $400. And then you got really like detailed into getting to know which level of protection you need, because when you give it to somebody here, I mean, it's the last thing you want to make sure it's good, like, because it's just and so. Anyway, so did a little bit of those. It was like hundreds of units. I would go to Poland back and forth. I would bring it by myself in the car. I would find people who would bring. So like was kind of interesting, fun logistic kind of stuff. I still have so many pictures with me and like so much stuff in my house. It was a time. It was a time of my life. But I was like, okay, I still want to do something which is something for kids, which make it possible. So I myself, with no support, found a bigger shelter in Lviv. And I was asking myself a question, like, what can I do as one person to help? And I was like, I speak English. Maybe I'll go and teach them English and then something else. So I went there by myself. And I think at that moment, like, nobody was asking anything. And I'm very, like, I don't know, people trust me. They never ask questions. So they're like, okay, you can teach English and you're some nonprofit. Good.
Great.
Come here. Yes. Because there's like nobody there. Well, they cared about those people. They would bring them whatever they need for their essentials, like food, things like that. But nobody at that moment, and I think it's the same even now, nobody really goes to the shelters to actually help people, kids and people with the long-term programs. What I've noticed, some NGOs go there for 3 days, takes pictures, gives them gifts, takes pictures with the gifts, and never come back. And this is what I heard from those shelters, and that breaks my heart. I understand maybe small nonprofit like me, when I don't take as many pictures and I don't post as much, maybe we're not as successful with fundraising, but at least I know that kids that we deal with, we actually making the difference. So I'm not sure. I think the way charity world works is just, I don't know, it's kind of disgusts me in some way, because it's very corporate. And then I know all these executives, they spend so much money on hotels and things like that. For me, for example, I never planning to even getting paid for the work I do, because I make money in different industry. I make money as CPA. So for me, it's not important. And all the money raised just goes to kids, and they go to, maybe we'll hire some program coordinators and stuff like that, because it's a lot of work. And those people needs to get paid, because you can't do that for a very long term. I mean, you can and cannot. I notice some people in Ukraine, it's hard to them to volunteer long term, because they need still to support their families, and money is an issue here. So even if you pay a small salary to people, it makes a huge difference for them. And so anyways, just admin cost, but I think that's fine. So going back to that, so I came by myself, and it was like all these older kids you meet now from shelters, like Sasha, Nastya, Dasha, Stas, Lev, all these kids, they were there. And they were like, and we would just start classes, and they would come because they had nothing else to do. The school was canceled at that time because the war started. They didn't know how to, how to schedule it. And it was like, almost summer, right? It was like April, May, and then we were there all summer. So we did like fun programs. We would do like similar to what we do now, but with whoever we were stationed at that shelter. So we tell them, you come to us. And those kids would come all the time. And where I'm trying to go. So that's how it started. Then many other volunteers came, and then we became a little bit more structural. We started doing more classes for kids of military families as well, because that's the biggest focus right now. I think after 2.5 years, internally displaced people should be okay, because it's been time and it's been already a lot of help. But I think for kids from military families, it's really hard for them. So I think this is somebody we're helping out. But for now, we're very happy. We have like almost every season we try to do a program similar to summer program, and we have like 50, 60 kids involved each program, and everybody's just so happy after the program. So I think that's beautiful because I see the change in kids. I see how happy that they become happier, and I'm planning to do it at least until the war over, and then we'll see what's going to happen after.
Right.
Maybe we'll do something else because that will be a different world after that.
Well, I think the biggest obvious impact that you made the first time you came to the shelter is they were like, oh, somebody does care.
I agree.
And
also,
important.
They moved from Eastern Ukraine. For them, people from Western Ukraine were like, I don't know, like somebody's like, it was like like a foreign people. They didn't know those people. Even though, I mean, they understand Ukrainian, but they spoke Russian there. But that's not a big deal. Whatever language you speak, that's yours. But for them, they were not sure if those people are kind or if those people can be trusted. It's like coming to a different country because Ukraine is so big. It pretty much covers full Europe. So when they met me, they're like, oh, we kind of like people from Lviv because we met you. I was like, that's nice.
That's
and then
nice
they, of course, liked all the volunteers. I mean, they were thrilled. The best people are coming, so that was nice.
Yeah, it's a nice story, and I'll be happy to share that with people back home.
Thank you so much, but I also want to thank you again because with people like you, nothing I do would be possible. So thank you so much, Gary. It's a big deal for us. What you do personally, such a big deal. Thank you so much.
Well, it's an honor for me, and I would just say Slava Ukraini. That's how I would end it.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. I hope you enjoyed our amazing volunteer story as much as I did. I truly hope it inspires you to volunteer in Ukraine. We need as much help as we can get, and every effort counts. Check out our Instagram, Make It Possible Ukraine, and our website, makeitpossible.ua.org, for information on our current and future programs. If you can, please support our future initiatives financially by donating on our website. Your contribution will help us continue to bring smiles to more kids in Ukraine. Thank you so much, and see you in the next episode.